At a wedding, the billionaire saw his ex after 5 years. Then the little girl beside her ran toward him. "Mommy said you might not come, but I knew. I knew you'd be here." The little girl's voice cut through the elegant wedding reception like a bell. Her small hands gripped the billionaire's expensive suit pants as she looked up at him with eyes that mirrored his own. "Sweetheart, wait." The woman's voice trembled from across the ballroom. "You can't just run up to people like that." But the child shook her head, curls bouncing. "But it's not people, Mommy. It's him. It's my daddy." The champagne glass hit the marble floor. Crystal exploded. Heads turned, and Julian Drake's entire world shattered with it. If you're already hooked, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. This story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster, and I promise you won't see some of these twists coming. And hey, comment below where you're watching from, or just say, "I'm with you, Dr. Phillips." I love knowing my story family is out there listening. Now, let's dive in. Julian Drake's hand had been steady exactly 3 seconds earlier. 3 seconds before his past collided with his present in the middle of Portland's most exclusive wedding reception of the season. The Westwood Grand Ballroom glittered with 1,000 points of light, from crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. White roses and orchids cascaded from towering centerpieces. A string quartet played softly in the corner while 200 of Portland's elite celebrated. The union of tech mogul Brandon Chen and philanthropist Victoria Sterling. Julian had come because business required it. Brandon was a potential client for Drake Architecture, the kind of client who could transform a successful firm into a legendary one. Julian had planned to make an appearance, shake the right hands, exchange the right pleasantries, and leave. He'd planned to be home by 9 with a glass of bourbon and the blueprints for his latest project. He had not planned for this. Across the ballroom, weaving through designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, he'd seen her. Dr. Naomi Rivers, the woman who vanished from his life 6 years ago without a trace, without a goodbye, without any explanation that made sense. She wore a simple emerald dress that made her dark skin glow under the chandelier light. Her hair was different now. Shorter, styled in soft curls that framed her face. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Signs of exhaustion or worry, or perhaps just the passage of time that had somehow made her even more beautiful. His chest had tightened as memories flooded back. Late nights at the community center where they'd met. Her laughter as he'd attempted to help third graders with art projects and failed spectacularly. The way she'd looked at him, not like he was Julian Drake, billionaire architect, but just like he was Julian. A man, flawed and hopeful and desperately in love with her. But what made his blood run cold, what made his hands start to tremble, and the champagne slosh over the rim of his crystal glass, was the little girl holding Naomi's hand. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She wore what looked like a flower girl dress, dusty rose-colored with a full skirt that touched her knees. She had deep brown skin like her mother, Naomi's elegant bone structure. But those eyes were unmistakably his. The same unusual amber gold that Julian saw in the mirror every morning. The same eyes his father had. The rare genetic marker that ran in the Drake family like a signature written in DNA. Julian watched, frozen, as Naomi bent down to whisper something to the little girl. The child nodded enthusiastically, her curls bouncing. Then, before Julian could process what was happening, before he could move, or think, or breathe, the little girl broke away from her mother's restraining hand and started running, not wandering, not walking, running directly toward him with purpose and recognition and the kind of certainty that children have before the world teaches them doubt. The ballroom seemed to slow down. Wedding guests moved in blurred motion around him. The string quartet's Vivaldi became distant background noise. All Julian could focus on was this tiny person weaving through the crowd. Her face was lit up with pure joy, heading straight for him like she knew exactly who he was. Like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. "Daddy Julian," she called out, her voice high and clear, cutting through every conversation in their vicinity. The champagne glass slipped from Julian's nerveless fingers. Time seemed to stop in the heartbeat between his hand opening and the crystal hitting the floor. Then the explosion of sound. Glass shattering on marble. The spray of expensive champagne across polished shoes. Heads turning. conversations stopping mid-sentence, phones emerging from purses and pockets. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered because this child, this beautiful little girl who was clearly his daughter, crashed into his legs and wrapped her small arms around his knees with the fierceness of someone who'd waited too long for a hug. "I found you," she said, looking up at him with those impossible eyes that held his own face reflected back at him. "Mommy said you were here. She showed me your picture lots of times. I made you something." Julian's knees nearly buckled. He was vaguely aware of his business partner Richard appearing at his elbow, vaguely aware of the murmurs spreading through the crowd like ripples on water, vaguely aware that his carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. But he couldn't look away from this child. She was pulling a folded piece of paper from a small purse that hung across her chest. Her fingers, so small and delicate but already showing the long, elegant shape of his own hands, carefully unfolded the drawing. It was done in crayon. A building. Not just any building. His building. The children's hospital he'd designed that had opened 3 months ago. The one that had won awards and accolades. The one he'd poured his heart into for reasons he'd never fully explained to anyone. "This is your building," the little girl explained, with the seriousness of a professor giving a lecture. "The one for sick kids. Mommy showed me pictures online. She said you make buildings that help people feel better. I thought if I drew it, you'd know I understand. About making things that matter." She pointed to details she'd somehow captured. The healing gardens on the 3rd floor, the glass bridges connecting the wings, the tower designed to catch the sunrise so young patients could wake to light. "See? I put in the gardens. And the windows. Because Mommy says light helps people heal. And you put lots of light in your buildings." She looked up at him expectantly. "Do you like it?" Julian couldn't speak. His throat had closed completely. He crouched down, his $3,000 Tom Ford suit crumpling against the marble floor, designer shoes, in a puddle of champagne, his image and reputation, and everything that usually mattered, completely forgotten. Because none of it compared to this moment. "What's your name?" he managed to whisper, though his voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. The little girl beamed. "I'm Aria. Aria James Rivers." She hesitated, then added in a conspiratorial whisper, "But my middle name is special. Mommy says it's from someone important to you. Someone who understood buildings. And beauty and," she stumbled over the word, clearly having practiced it, "integrity. Is that true? Was there someone named James who taught you about buildings?" The world tilted. James, his grandfather's name. James Drake, the architect who'd raised Julian after his parents died. The man who'd taught him that buildings were more than steel and stone, that they were promises made in physical form, that architecture could heal, could serve, could matter. The only person in Julian's family who'd shown him what real love looked like. James had died when Julian was 20. The loss had nearly broken him. And Naomi remembered, after 6 years, after whatever had happened to tear them apart, after all the silence and absence and unanswered questions, she'd remembered the stories he told her, the late-night conversations about the grandfather who'd shaped him, and she'd given their daughter his name. "Yes," Julian managed, his voice breaking. "James was my grandfather's name. He taught me everything I know about architecture, about making buildings that matter." Aria's smile could have powered the city. "I knew it. I told Mommy I wanted to meet you. She said maybe someday. But then, we got invited here because Mommy helped Mrs. Chen's sister with her medical stuff. And Mrs. Chen said we should come. And Mommy said you might be here because Mr. Chen is your friend." Each word was delivered with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old who'd solved a complex puzzle. "And I said we have to go because I need to meet my daddy." Each word was a hammer blow to Julian's heart. This child had wanted to meet him, had known about him, had been told stories and shown pictures, had drawn his buildings and understood his work. While Julian had spent 6 years believing Naomi had simply decided he wasn't worth staying for. 6 years thinking she'd moved on, started a new life somewhere far away, forgotten him completely. She'd been raising their daughter, telling Aria about him, keeping his memory alive. Behind Aria, Naomi finally reached them. She moved like someone approaching a car accident. Inevitable, terrible, unable to look away. Her face was a canvas of emotions: terror, resignation, exhaustion, and underneath it all, something that looked like relief. "Arya, honey," she said, her voice barely steady. "We talked about this. You can't just run up to people, even if you've seen their pictures." "But it's not people, Mommy." Arya's logic was simple and devastating. "It's Daddy Julian. You said he was here. You showed me which one he was. You said I should stay close to you. But I wanted to give him my drawing before we left." Naomi closed her eyes. A single tear tracked down her cheek. "I know, baby. But this isn't how we planned it. Plans change." Arya shrugged, with the wisdom of someone quoting a well-worn saying. "Mrs. Martha says the best things usually don't go according to plan." Julian stood slowly. He still held the drawing. His hands were shaking. Around them, the wedding reception had gone quiet. At least, their corner of it had. People were staring. Phones were definitely recording. Somewhere the bride and groom had probably been informed that there was a situation developing. Richard cleared his throat. "Julian," he said quietly, "perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private. There's a sitting room on the second floor. I can arrange it." Julian nodded. He couldn't take his eyes off Naomi. "We need to talk." "I know." Her voice was barely audible. "Julian, I never meant for this to happen here. Like this, in front of everyone. How long have you been in the city?" She met his eyes. "We never left." The words hit him like a physical blow, like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart until he couldn't breathe. "Never left." 6 years. 6 years of private investigators searching across state lines. 6 years of convinced himself she must be in California or New York or somewhere far away. 6 years of imagining her building a new life in a new city with new people who didn't know anything about Julian Drake. And she'd been here, in Portland, the whole time, raising his daughter blocks away from his office, shopping at the same stores, breathing the same air, living parallel lives that never intersected. Until tonight. "Mr. Drake?" Richard's voice was gentle but firm. "The sitting room." Julian looked down at Arya. She was watching him with those autumn gold eyes, completely unaware of the adult complications swirling around her. To her, this was simple. She'd wanted to meet her father. She'd made a plan. She'd executed it. Now she was waiting to see what happened next. "Would you like to come with me?" Julian asked her, his voice surprisingly steady. "Your mom too." "Somewhere quieter where we can talk?" Arya looked up at Naomi. "Can we, Mommy?" Naomi's face crumpled for just a moment. Then she pulled herself together with visible effort. The same strength Julian had fallen in love with 6 years ago. The ability to face hard things head on. "Yes, baby. We can go talk." "Good." Arya slipped her small hand into Julian's as naturally as if she'd done it 1,000 times. "Because I have lots of questions. Mrs. Martha says you should always ask questions when you meet new people, even if they're not really new because you've known about them your whole life. Despite everything, despite the shock and the confusion and the rising tide of emotions he couldn't name." Julian felt a smile tug at his lips. "Who's Mrs. Martha?" "The librarian at the public library. She's very smart. She's been alive for 75 years, so she knows lots of things." Arya swung their joined hands as they walked. "She helps me understand stuff when Mommy's at work. Like why some kids have 2 parents who live together, and some kids only have 1 parent, and some kids have parents who live in different houses. She says all families are different, and different isn't bad, it's just different." Julian glanced at Naomi over Arya's head. She was crying silently now, tears streaming down her face as she watched their daughter chatter away, completely comfortable, holding the hand of a father she'd just met. Richard led them through the ballroom to a side door. Julian could feel eyes following them, could hear whispers starting. His mother would know about this within the hour. Patricia Drake had informants everywhere, especially at events like this. The thought of his mother made his stomach clench, but he pushed it aside. That was a problem for later. Right now, all that mattered was the little girl holding his hand and the woman walking beside them who held answers to 6 years of questions. The sitting room was on the second floor, away from the reception noise. It was smaller than the ballroom, but still elegant. Cream-colored furniture arranged around a fireplace. Windows overlooking the city lights beginning to emerge in the dusk. The kind of room designed for small gatherings or bridal party preparations. Richard ushered them in. "I'll make sure you're not disturbed," he said quietly to Julian. "Take all the time you need. I'll handle Brandon and Victoria." "Thank you," Julian said. The words felt inadequate for what Richard was doing. Running interference, managing the situation, being the friend Julian desperately needed right now. After Richard left, the three of them stood in awkward silence for a moment. Arya was the one who broke it. "This is a pretty room," she announced, going to the window. "Look how high up we are, Mommy. You can see all the buildings with lights." "Not too close to the window, baby," Naomi said automatically, the voice of a mother who'd spent 6 years vigilant and alone. Arya stepped back obediently. Then she turned to Julian. "Are you surprised to meet me?" The question was so direct, so completely without guile, that Julian found himself answering with equal honesty. "Yes, very surprised. I didn't know you existed until 5 minutes ago." Arya's forehead crinkled. "You didn't know?" "But Mommy told me she sent you a message when I was still in her belly. She said she tried to tell you about me." Julian's gaze snapped to Naomi. "What?" Naomi sank into one of the cream chairs like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "Arya, sweetheart, this is going to be a long conversation with grown-up things. Why don't you sit and draw for a bit? I brought your sketchbook." She pulled a small backpack off her shoulder. Julian hadn't even noticed she was carrying it. She extracted a sketchbook and a pencil case decorated with trains. "I like trains," Arya explained to Julian as she settled at a small side table near the window. "Some kids like princesses or unicorns. I like trains because they go places, long distances, taking people on journeys." She opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. "I'll draw while you and Mommy talk, but I'm right here if you need me." The maturity in her voice was startling. This was a child who'd learned to entertain herself, to be patient while adults handled complicated things, to exist quietly in the margins of her mother's busy life. Julian's heart broke a little more. He moved to stand in front of Naomi. Not sitting, too much energy coursing through him. "You sent me a message when you were pregnant. I never got it." "I know." Naomi's voice was hollow. "I realized that later, Naomi." He crouched down so they were eye level. "What happened? 6 years ago. What happened?" She looked at him with eyes that held oceans of pain. "Can we wait until Arya falls asleep? She seems engaged now, but it's past her bedtime. She'll crash soon. In this conversation, Julian, there are things I don't want her to hear. Details that aren't appropriate for 6-year-old ears." From the table, Arya spoke without looking up from her drawing. "I'm 6.5. The half is important. Despite everything," Julian smiled. "She's right. The half is very important. I know big words," Arya continued, her pencil moving across the page. "And Mommy tells me lots of stuff. She says kids can handle truth if you give it to them right. But she also says some things are grown-up business." She looked up then, serious. "This is grown-up business, right? About why you didn't know about me?" "Yes," Naomi said softly. "Very grown-up business." "Okay." Arya returned to her drawing. "I can wait. I'm good at waiting." The words landed like stones. "I'm good at waiting. 6 years old and already too familiar with patience. With being quiet. With not asking for things. With accepting that some questions didn't have answers yet." Julian stood and went to the window. The city sprawled below. His city, Portland, where he'd built his reputation designing buildings that changed skylines, where he'd fallen in love with a brilliant young doctor who'd challenged everything he thought he knew about wealth and purpose, where he'd spent 6 years trying to fill a hole that no amount of success could fill. Richard appeared at the door with a quiet knock. I took the liberty of ordering some food. Thought the little one might be hungry. Indeed, staff members entered with covered dishes. They set up a small spread on the coffee table. Mac and cheese, fresh fruit, chocolate milk, and more sophisticated fare for the adults that Julian doubted either he or Naomi could stomach right now. But Arya lit up. Mac and cheese, the fancy kind with breadcrumbs on top. She moved to the couch with the unself-conscious ease of a child who was hungry. Naomi helped her settle a napkin on her lap, poured the chocolate milk into a glass. Small maternal gestures that Julian had never witnessed, would never get back. 6 years of moments lost. He forced himself to eat something. A few bites of food he didn't taste. Richard had included a bottle of wine, and Julian poured a glass for Naomi and himself. She accepted it gratefully, though she only took small sips. Arya ate enthusiastically, chattering between bites about the wedding. The bride's dress was so pretty. Did you see all the sparkles? And the cake is 5 layers. 5! Mrs. Martha says big weddings are traditional, but small weddings can be just as meaningful. It's about the promise, not the party. She took a long drink of chocolate milk. Are you going to marry Mommy? Julian choked on his wine. Naomi closed her eyes. What? Julian managed. You're my daddy. Mommy's my mommy. I read a book about families, and lots of times mommies and daddies get married. So are you going to? Arya's logic was airtight in the way only a child's could be. Arya, Naomi said gently, it's more complicated than that. Why? Because your dad and I haven't seen each other in a long time. We have a lot to figure out first. Oh, Arya seemed to accept this. Okay, but maybe later, after you figure stuff out. Maybe, Naomi said, her voice cracking. We'll see. Arya nodded and returned to her food. Crisis averted with the resilience of childhood. Julian marveled at her, this small person who'd existed for 6 years without him, who developed her own personality and quirks and ways of seeing the world, who asked impossible questions and drew buildings and liked trains instead of princesses. His daughter. The reality of it kept hitting him in waves. He had a daughter, a 6-year-old daughter who knew who he was, who'd been told about him, who'd wanted to meet him badly enough to orchestrate this encounter. As predicted, Arya began to fade around 8 o'clock. Her chatter slowed. Her eyes drooped. She climbed onto the couch next to Naomi and leaned against her mother's shoulder. I'm just resting my eyes, she mumbled, not sleeping. Of course not, Naomi said softly, stroking her daughter's curls. Just resting. Within 5 minutes, Arya was fully asleep. The deep, boneless sleep of childhood. Naomi shifted carefully, laying her down on the couch. Julian took off his suit jacket without thinking and handed it to Naomi. She spread it over Arya like a blanket, their daughter, covered in his jacket, sleeping peacefully while the adults prepared to discuss the wreckage of their past. Naomi stood and moved to the other side of the room, as far from Arya as possible, while still keeping her in sight. Julian followed. They stood by the fireplace, speaking in low voices. Why? The single word came out rougher than Julian intended. Just tell me why, Naomi. Why did you leave? She took a shaky breath. Your grandfather came to see me. 3 days after I told you I was pregnant. Julian's mind went blank. What grandfather? Grandpa James died when I was 20. Not that grandfather. Naomi's voice was barely above a whisper. Harrison. Your father's father. The name landed like a grenade. Harrison Drake, Julian's paternal grandfather, the real estate developer who'd built an empire through ruthless business practices, the man who prioritized profit over people, power over principles, the grandfather Julian saw maybe twice a year at obligatory family functions, and only because trust fund stipulations required it. The man Julian actively avoided because Harrison represented everything Julian despised about the Drake family legacy. What did he do? Julian's voice had gone dangerously quiet. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself. I was in my 2nd year of residency. Pediatric surgery. I was working at Portland General, doing a rotation in the pediatric ICU. He showed up during my shift. He had 2 men with him, lawyers, I think, or maybe bodyguards. I couldn't tell. They waited until my break. Then they cornered me in the parking garage. Julian's hands clenched into fists. He said he'd had me investigated. Naomi's voice shook. He knew everything. My student loan debt. I was drowning in it, barely making residence salary. He knew my younger sister, Maya, had just gotten accepted to art school but couldn't afford tuition. He knew my parents were struggling with my dad's MS diagnosis, the medical bills that insurance didn't cover, the modifications they needed to make to their house. All of it. He threatened you. It wasn't a question. He laid it out very clearly. If I stayed with you, if I kept the baby and told you about it, there would be consequences. Naomi's tears were flowing freely now. He said he had connections on the hospital board, could make sure my residency ended, could ensure I never worked in pediatric surgery again. Not just in Portland, anywhere. He painted this picture of my sister dropping out of school, my parents losing their house, my dad not getting the care he needed, my family destroyed, all because I was, quote, selfish enough to trap you with a pregnancy. Julian felt rage building in his chest, a hot, white fury that made his vision narrow. You didn't trap me. We both. It was an accident, yes, but I would have. God, Naomi, I would have been there. I know. Her voice broke. I knew then. But Harrison said it didn't matter what you wanted. He said you had responsibilities to the Drake legacy, that you were meant for more than playing house with, and I quote, some nobody doctor from a nobody family. He said I was an inconvenient complication that needed to be dealt with. And then he offered you money. Julian could see it so clearly. Harrison's playbook. Threaten first, then offer a way out. Make people think they're choosing when really they're being coerced. Enough to clear my debts. Pay for Maya's education. Cover my parents' medical expenses and home modifications. All of it. More than enough. Naomi looked at him with eyes full of old pain. All I had to do was disappear. Never contact you again. Never tell you about the baby. Just vanish. But you didn't take the money. No. Something fierce flashed across her face. I told him to go to hell. I told him I was going to tell you everything. Show you exactly what kind of monster your grandfather was. I thought love was enough. I thought we could fight him together. What stopped you? Naomi's face crumpled. That night, my father was hospitalized. A severe MS flare-up. The worst he'd ever had. He couldn't breathe properly. They had him in the ICU where I worked. I watched my father struggling for every breath, while my mother fell apart and my sister tried to hold everyone together. Julian felt his stomach drop. No, Harrison showed up at the hospital while I was sitting in the ICU waiting room. He walked right up to me, calm as anything, and said this was a warning. Naomi's voice had gone hollow. He said next time, my father might not be so lucky. He said accidents happen, especially to people who don't know their place, especially to people with expensive medical needs and inadequate insurance. He threatened your father's life. Julian's voice was shaking with rage. I don't know if he meant it literally. Maybe he was just trying to scare me. But Julian, my dad had almost died. I was 26 years old and pregnant and terrified. This man had unlimited money and power and connections. He'd already proven he could find out everything about my family. He'd demonstrated that he could make my father's health crisis happen right when I defied him. She looked at Julian with tears streaming down her face. What was I supposed to do? How was I supposed to fight that? Julian wanted to put his fist through the wall, wanted to scream, wanted to dig Harrison up from his grave just so he could kill him again. But instead, he moved to Naomi and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing. 6 years of holding it together. 6 years of carrying this alone. 6 years of fear and exhaustion and impossible choices. I'm so sorry, she whispered against his chest. I'm so sorry. I took your daughter away from you. I stole 6 years. I know I did. But I didn't know what else to do. You survived. Julian's voice was rough. You protected your family. You did what you had to do. I tried to send you a message. After Aria was born, I created a new email address Harrison wouldn't know about. I sent you pictures and explained everything, but it bounced back. I realized later your email had probably changed, or maybe Harrison had already blocked me from every possible avenue. She pulled back to look at him. I tried, Julian. I swear I tried. I believe you. And he did. He could see the truth written all over her face. The years of guilt and fear and hoping against hope that someday he'd understand. Why didn't you try again after Harrison died? The question came out before he could stop it. Naomi stepped back, wiping her face. Harrison died? When? 2 years ago. Massive stroke. Dead within hours. She stared at him. I didn't know. Julian, I didn't know he died. How could you not know? It was in all the papers. The news covered it extensively. I stopped following Drake family news. It hurt too much. Seeing your picture, seeing you at events with other women, reading about your buildings and your success, and knowing I'd made the choice to walk away from all of it. She shook her head. I had no idea he was dead. The pieces fell into place. She'd been living in a self-imposed information blackout, protecting herself from the pain of seeing him move on, never realizing that the threat hanging over her head had been removed 2 years ago. Even if I had known, she continued quietly, how would I have approached you? How do you call someone after 6 years and say, oh, by the way, you have a daughter? How do you explain why you left? Harrison's lawyers might be dead, but his influence, the Drake family power, that's still real, Julian. I was terrified that if I came back, if I tried to claim anything, your family would take Arya from me. I would never let that happen. You didn't even know she existed. How could you have stopped something you didn't know about? The logic was sound, and it hurt. I told myself I was protecting her. I convinced myself that someday, when she was older, when I was more stable financially, maybe then I could reach out. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. They stood in silence for a moment, processing. The room felt too small and too large all at once. On the couch, Arya stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about trains. Why tonight? Julian asked. Why come to this wedding? I didn't know you'd be here, I swear. A friend got me tickets. She thought I'd enjoy it. She knows I never go out, never do anything for myself. She pushed me to come. Naomi glanced at Arya. I didn't realize until we arrived that you might attend. Brandon Chen. You've been trying to land him as a client for months. I saw it mentioned in a business brief at the hospital. By then Arya had spotted your picture in the wedding program. She put it together immediately. She knew what I looked like. I showed her pictures, told her stories. I wanted her to know her father was a good man, even if circumstances kept you apart. Naomi's voice dropped. She's been asking more questions lately. When does she get to meet you? Why can't you visit? Is it because she did something wrong? I couldn't let her think any of this was her fault. Julian looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully under his jacket. Tonight she just decided. Exactly. She saw you across the ballroom, and she decided tonight was the night. Before I could stop her, before I could think, she just ran. Naomi laughed, shakily. She's got your determination. When she decides something, she commits completely. She's got your courage, running toward someone instead of away from difficult things. They shared a small smile, the first genuine moment of connection since the bombshell had exploded. What happens now? Naomi asked. Now. Julian took a breath. Now you come home with me. Both of you. Julian, I can't just... It's late. Arya's asleep. My house has a guest room already set up. He held up a hand before she could protest. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not trying to rush anything. But I just found out I have a daughter. I want to make her breakfast tomorrow morning. I want to wake up and have her be the first thing I see. I want one morning, Naomi. Just give me that. She searched his face, looking for anger, maybe, or judgment. But all she found was a man who'd just discovered he was a father and desperately needed to start making up for lost time. Okay, she whispered. One night. And then we figure out the rest. Julian carefully lifted Arya from the couch. She barely stirred, just mumbled something and curled against his chest. He could feel her heartbeat against him, steady and strong. His daughter, in his arms for the first time. Naomi gathered their things. The backpack, the sketchbook, the drawings Arya had made. Evidence of a life that had been happening parallel to Julian's for 6 years. Richard met them in the hallway. I've brought the car around to the side entrance. Fewer people. No cameras. Thank you. Julian didn't know what he'd done to deserve a friend like Richard, but he was grateful beyond words. They drove through Portland in near silence. Arya slept through the transfer to the car, through the drive, through everything. Naomi sat in the back with her, one hand on their daughter's shoulder. Julian kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching them, trying to reconcile this reality with the life he'd been living an hour ago. His house was in the Pearl District, a modern design, all clean lines and open spaces. He'd designed it himself 5 years ago, when he'd finally accepted that Naomi wasn't coming back. It was beautiful in an austere way, more showcase than home. Naomi's eyes widened as they pulled up. Julian, I know, it's too stark. Not kid-friendly at all. He looked at the house with new eyes, seeing what Arya would see. Hard surfaces, neutral colors, nothing soft or warm or welcoming. Help me fix it. Help me make it somewhere she'd want to visit. Something shifted in Naomi's expression. Okay. He carried Arya to the guest room. It was on the second floor, decorated in shades of gray and white. Impersonal, generic, but the bed was comfortable and there was a private bathroom attached. Naomi helped him tuck Arya in. Their daughter barely woke, just murmured night, Daddy Julian, before settling back into deep sleep. The words nearly brought Julian to his knees. Daddy Julian, said with such trust, such certainty, like she'd been saying it her whole life, instead of for the very first time. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, after Naomi had kissed Arya's forehead, and joined him in the hall, just watching her sleep, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her curls spread across the pillow, the rise and fall of her small chest. His daughter, real, solid. Here, downstairs, Julian poured them both water. Neither had spoken since putting Arya to bed. The weight of the evening pressed down on them. Naomi stood in his living room looking lost. Your home is beautiful. Very you. Very empty, you mean. I wasn't going to say that. You were thinking it. Julian handed her the water. I threw myself into work after you left, designed this place as a showcase, proof that I was fine, that I'd moved on, that I didn't need anyone. Did it work? No. The admission cost him. Every award I won, every building I designed, every success I had, none of it filled the hole you left. Naomi's eyes glistened. I watched you from a distance, saw the articles about your work, the hospital you designed. When I read about it, I knew you were thinking about our conversations, about my dreams of making pediatric care less frightening for kids. I couldn't give you those conversations anymore, Julian said quietly. Couldn't be your partner in those dreams, so I built it instead. Like if I made it real, some part of you would know I'd been listening. Julian, she set down her water and moved closer. I need you to understand something. Everything I did, every choice I made, it wasn't because I didn't love you. I loved you so much it terrified me. I just loved my family more. Or maybe I was just too scared to believe love could be enough against someone like Harrison. Was it? He asked the question that had been building all night. Enough? I don't know yet. Her honesty was painful and perfect, but I'd like to find out, if you're willing to try, to build something new instead of trying to recapture what we lost. Julian reached out and tucked a curl behind her ear. The gesture so familiar, his hand knew the motion before his brain registered moving. I'm willing, for Arya and for us, to see if we can find our way back to each other. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. They stood close, but not touching. The air between them charged with possibility and pain in equal measure. 6 years ago they'd been young and optimistic, and certain love could conquer anything. Now they were older, scarred, wiser. Maybe that was better. Maybe love built on truth and loss and hard-won understanding was stronger than love built on just passion and hope. I should sleep, Naomi said. It's been the longest day. Guest room is yours. There are clothes in the closet. My sister stays here sometimes. Julian paused. Thank you for coming, for staying, for giving me this. Thank you for not hating me. I could never hate you, Naomi. I'm furious at Harrison. I'm angry at circumstances and lost time and everything that kept us apart. But you did what you thought you had to do to protect the people you love. I understand that. I respect it, even as I hate what it cost us. She reached up and touched his face. Just a gentle brush of her fingers against his jaw. "Good night, Julian. Good night." He watched her climb the stairs, heard the guest room door close, stood alone in his too empty living room, and let the full weight of the evening finally crash over him. He had a daughter, a 6-year-old daughter who drew buildings and liked trains and had waited her whole life to meet him. He'd missed 6 years. Steps, first words, first days of school, birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays, skinned knees and nightmares, and the 1,000 small moments that made up a childhood. Gone, stolen, lost forever. But he had now. He had tomorrow morning when Arya would wake up in his house. He had the future stretching out ahead of them. He had a chance to be the father she deserved. And he had Naomi back in his life. Complicated and painful and wrapped in 6 years of trauma. But here, real, giving him a chance to prove that this time, love could be enough. Julian went to his study and pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, starting with his lawyer. "I need you to pull every piece of documentation on Harrison Drake," he said when the lawyer answered. "Every communication from 6 years ago. Phone records, emails, everything. I don't care what it costs or what privacy laws we have to navigate. I need to know exactly what he did." By morning, he'd have answers. He'd have proof, and then he'd decide what to do with it. But tonight, he climbed the stairs and paused outside the guest room. He could hear soft breathing from inside. Arya and Naomi sleeping under his roof. His family, broken, complicated, imperfect, but his. And he'd spend the rest of his life making sure nothing and no one ever threatened them again. Morning came too early, and not early enough. Julian had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Arya's face. Those autumn gold eyes looking up at him with absolute trust. Every time he started to drift off, he'd jolt awake with the certainty that this was all a dream, that he'd wake up alone in his empty house with no daughter sleeping down the hall. At 6 in the morning, he gave up trying to sleep. He showered and dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater. Then he went downstairs and stared at his kitchen like it was a foreign country. He'd never cooked breakfast for a child before. What did 6-year-olds eat? He pulled out his phone and searched. Pancakes seemed universal. He had the ingredients. Barely. His kitchen was usually stocked for a man who survived on coffee and takeout. He was halfway through mixing batter when he heard small footsteps on the stairs. Arya appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing yesterday's flower girl dress, her curls wild from sleep. She rubbed her eyes and blinked at him. "You're still here," she said, wonder filling her voice. "I thought maybe I dreamed you." Julian's throat tightened. "I'm real. I'm here. And I'm making pancakes." He held up the bowl of batter like evidence. "Your mom mentioned you like them?" "I love pancakes." Arya padded into the kitchen. "Can I help?" "Absolutely." She climbed onto a stool at the island. Julian found himself studying her in the morning light. The way she tucked her hair behind her ears, the exact shade of her skin, a perfect blend of his and Naomi's genetics, the shape of her nose, her hands. "You're staring," Arya observed. "Mommy says it's not polite to stare." "Sorry. I'm trying to memorize you." "Why?" "Because I missed the first 6 years. I want to remember everything from now on." Arya considered this. "Mrs. Martha says you can't change the past, but you can choose what you do with the present. And the present is called the present, because it's a gift." Julian smiled. "Mrs. Martha is very wise. She's 75. That's a lot of years to learn things." Arya watched him pour batter onto the griddle. "Do you know how to make them shaped like animals?" "Mommy makes them shaped like trains sometimes, but it's really hard. I don't know how to make shaped pancakes." "But I can learn." "That's okay. Round is good too." She swung her legs, heels thumping against the stool. "Daddy Julian?" The name still hit him like electricity. "Yes?" "Are you happy I exist?" The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Julian had to sit down, the spatula, and crouch beside her stool so they were eye level. "Arya, I am happier than I've ever been in my entire life that you exist. You are. You're the best thing I never knew I was missing." She smiled. Good, because I'm happy you exist too. Even though we just met, I feel like I've known you forever. Is that weird? No, I feel exactly the same way. Naomi appeared then, drawn by their voices. She'd changed into spare clothes she'd found in the guest room. One of Julian's sister's old sweatshirts and yoga pants. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked 26 again. Young and uncertain and beautiful. Something smells good, she said softly. Daddy Julian is making pancakes, Arya announced. Not shaped like anything, just round, but that's okay. Round pancakes are perfect. Naomi met Julian's eyes over Arya's head. 1,000 questions in that look. How are you? Are we okay? What happens now? Julian tried to answer with his own expression. I'm overwhelmed, but okay. We'll figure it out. One day at a time. They ate breakfast together at Julian's dining table that he'd never used for an actual family meal. Arya chattered about everything and nothing. Her favorite teacher at school. The science project she was working on about bridges. How Sophie, her best friend, could do a cartwheel, but Arya couldn't quite get it yet. Normal details of a normal childhood. Except nothing about this was normal. Julian absorbed every word. Asked questions. Learned that Arya loved strawberries, but hated blueberries. That she wanted to be an architect like him, or a doctor like Naomi, but maybe also a train conductor. That her favorite color was blue because it was the color of possibilities. Like the sky, she explained. It goes on forever. That's what Mrs. Martha says. Blue is the color of forever. After breakfast, Arya wanted to see Julian's office. He led her upstairs to his home studio, the room where he did his design work. It was full of drafting tables and computer screens and models of buildings in various stages of completion. Arya's eyes went huge. Whoa. She moved through the space with reverence, touching things gently. Looking at blueprints she couldn't possibly understand, but studying anyway. She stopped at the model of the children's hospital. This is the one I drew, she breathed. It's so pretty. Look at the tiny trees in the garden. And the little people. You can get closer. You can even touch it if you're careful. She looked at him for permission, then carefully examined the model. Her fingers traced the walkways, the glass bridges, the healing gardens on the 3rd floor. Why did you make it like this? She asked. With all the nature parts? Julian knelt beside her. Because when people are sick or hurt, nature helps them heal. Sunlight and fresh air and growing things. They make people feel better. So I designed the hospital to bring the outside inside. That's really smart. Arya looked up at him with those eyes that were his own reflected back. Mommy says you build with your heart, not just your hands. She said that? Arya nodded. She says the best architects don't just make buildings that look pretty. They make buildings that feel like hope. Julian glanced at Naomi, who was standing in the doorway watching them. Her eyes were wet. Your mom is right, Julian said. That's exactly what I try to do. They spent the morning together, all 3 of them. Naomi told Julian about their life, the small apartment they lived in, Arya's school, the routine they'd built over 6 years. Julian shared about his work, the projects he was passionate about, the ones that paid the bills but didn't feed his soul. Around noon, reality intruded. Naomi's phone rang. She glanced at it and sighed. I have to get this. It's the hospital. She stepped into another room. Julian could hear her voice, professional and calm, discussing a patient case. When she returned, her face was tight. I have a surgery scheduled for tomorrow morning. I need to prep. And Arya has school on Monday. We should probably go home, get back to our routine. The thought of them leaving made Julian's chest constrict. What if you didn't? Didn't what? Go back. Stay here. Not forever. Just let me be part of the routine. Let me drive Arya to school tomorrow. Have dinner with you both. Start figuring out what our new normal looks like. Naomi bit her lip. Julian, we can't just move in with you. Why not? Because it's too fast. Because Arya needs stability. Because we have a life, and you have a life, and we can't just smash them together and hope it works. Then let's not smash. Let's blend. Carefully. Julian looked at Arya, who was pretending not to listen while obviously listening to every word. I've missed 6 years. I don't want to miss another day. Please, stay for the weekend at least. Let me have this. Naomi closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was resignation and hope mixed together. The weekend. We'll stay through Sunday. Then we reassess. That's all I'm asking. Arya pumped her fist. Yes, I want to see more of the building models. They spent the afternoon making Julian's house more child-friendly. Naomi drove to their apartment to get clothes and Arya's things while Julian and Arya went shopping. He'd never been to a children's store in his life. Arya led him through with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she needed. A nightlight shaped like a moon, books about trains and architecture, art supplies, a stuffed animal she fell in love with, a plush train conductor named Percy. Mommy says I have too many stuffed animals, Arya confided. But I think you can never have too many friends, even if they're stuffed. Julian bought Percy without hesitation. I agree completely. That evening, they ordered pizza and ate it on the floor of Julian's living room because Arya said food tasted better when you had a picnic. She was right. Or maybe everything just tasted better because she was there. After dinner, Arya asked Julian to read to her. They sat together on the couch, Arya tucked against his side, while he read about trains that could talk and went on adventures. She fell asleep halfway through the third book, her head heavy on his shoulder. Julian didn't move, didn't want to, just sat there holding his daughter while she slept, feeling her warmth and weight and realness. Naomi took a picture with her phone. For the memories you missed, she said softly. Starting now, we document everything. Later, after they'd put Arya to bed in the guest room that was slowly becoming her room, Julian and Naomi sat in his living room with tea neither of them really wanted. I need to tell you something, Julian said. I called my lawyer last night. Asked him to pull all of Harrison's records from 6 years ago. Naomi tensed. Why? Because I need to see it. Need to know exactly what he did. The threats, the pressure campaign, all of it. Julian, what good will that do? He's dead. It's over, is it? Julian leaned forward. His lawyers are still active, still managing the Drake estate. What if they have instructions to continue his work? What if they're still monitoring you, still prepared to make good on old threats? Fear flickered across Naomi's face. I hadn't thought of that. I need to make sure you and Arya are protected, really protected. Not just hoping the threat is gone, but knowing it is. She was quiet for a long moment. What will you do if you find evidence? I don't know yet, but I think you should know what I discovered. Harrison's lawyers kept everything, every email, every payment to investigators, every detail of the intimidation campaign. They kept evidence of their own crimes. Harrison instructed them to, as insurance. If you ever came back, if you ever tried to contact me or make claims about Arya, they were prepared to discredit you, paint you as unstable, money-hungry, whatever it took. Naomi's hands shook. So even with him dead, the threat remained. Until now, I'm firing the firm. I've already started the process of moving all Drake family legal business elsewhere. And Naomi, you could sue. You'd have grounds. Harassment, intimidation, emotional distress. You'd win. She shook her head immediately. No, Naomi. No, Julian. Suing won't change anything. It won't give us back the 6 years. It'll just drag everything into public view. Put Arya in the middle of a media circus. Make our story about revenge instead of healing. Don't you want justice? I want peace. She looked at him with clear eyes. I want to move forward. I want Arya to grow up knowing her father without it being tangled in lawsuits and scandal. Harrison's dead. The threat is over. That's enough for me. Julian felt something shift in his chest. Her grace. Her ability to choose the harder path of forgiveness over the easier one of anger. It humbled him. You're better than me, he said quietly. I want to destroy everyone who hurt you. That's because you're just finding out. You're still in the anger phase. I've had 6 years to process, to move through rage into acceptance. She reached across the space between them and took his hand. But I appreciate the impulse. I appreciate knowing you'd fight for us. They sat like that for a while, hands linked. The first real moment of peace since the chaos of the wedding reception. What happens Monday? Naomi asked, eventually. After the weekend? I don't know. What do you want to happen? I want to take this slow. Build trust. Show Arya that this is real and permanent before we make big changes. Okay, slow. I can do slow. Julian squeezed her hand. But Naomi, I want to be part of Arya's daily life, not just weekend visits. I want breakfast mornings and bedtime stories and help with homework. I know. We'll figure out a schedule. Maybe you come to our place for dinner some nights. We come here other nights. You take her to school sometimes. We co-parent even though we're not living together. Yet. She smiled slightly. Yet. The word hung between them. A promise and a question, all at once. Pause for a second. If you're feeling that anger rising, that sense of injustice at what Harrison did, you're exactly where you should be in this story. This is the moment everything changes. But before we continue, if you haven't subscribed yet, click that button now. Stories like this, stories about love, loss, betrayal, and redemption. That's what we do here at Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Or just say, I'm with you, Dr. Phillips. Now let's see how they build their new life together. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Julian showed up for breakfast 3 mornings a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. He'd arrive at Naomi's small apartment with fresh bagels or muffins, and they'd eat together before Arya went to school. He learned the geography of their life. The apartment building with the creaky stairs, the neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd helped Naomi with childcare over the years, the corner market where Arya liked to pick out fruit, the library where Mrs. Martha worked and had become Arya's unofficial grandmother. Julian met Mrs. Martha on a Saturday morning. She was exactly as Arya had described, 75 years old, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and glasses perched on her nose. She looked at Julian with sharp, assessing eyes. So you're the father, she said, not a question. Yes, ma'am. Arya talks about you constantly. Daddy Julian said this. Daddy Julian knows about that. I hope you understand the responsibility you've taken on. I do. Good. Her expression softened slightly. That child has waited her whole life to meet you. Don't disappoint her. I won't. I promise. Mrs. Martha nodded. Promises are easy. It's the keeping them that matters. Julian started attending Arya's soccer games. She played on a team of 6- and 7-year-olds who spent more time chasing butterflies than the ball. Arya wasn't particularly athletic, but she tried hard. Julian stood on the sidelines with other parents, cheering every time she touched the ball. Naomi joined him for one game, arriving straight from a night shift at the hospital. She looked exhausted. Julian bought her coffee from the concession stand and she accepted it gratefully. You didn't have to come, he said. You should be sleeping. I wanted to see you both together. This is nice. Normal. They watched Arya miss an easy goal but laugh about it anyway. She waved at them from the field, all joy and enthusiasm despite her complete lack of coordination. She's perfect, Julian said. She is. Even when she drives me crazy asking why about everything. Naomi sipped her coffee. Thank you for showing up. For being consistent. She needs that. I need it too. One evening, Julian arrived for dinner and found Naomi on the verge of tears. Arya was at a friend's house for a playdate. Naomi was surrounded by bills and her laptop showed her student loan account. Hey, Julian said softly. What's wrong? Everything costs so much, she said, her voice breaking. I just got the tuition bill for Arya's school. And my loans. I'm barely making a dent in the interest, and our landlord is raising the rent next month. I don't know how I'm going to make it all work. Julian knelt in front of her. Let me help. Julian, financially. Let me help with money. I know you want to be independent. I respect that. But Arya is my daughter. Supporting her is my responsibility, not a favor I'm doing you. It feels like charity. It's not charity. It's me being a father. He took her hands. Please, let me set up a college fund for her. Let me cover her school tuition. Let me help with rent so you're not drowning. Naomi was quiet for a long time. I've been doing everything alone for so long. It's hard to accept help. You don't have to be alone anymore. That's what I'm trying to show you. She finally nodded. Okay, for Arya's future, for her education and security, I'll accept help. Thank you. The next week, Julian had his accountant set up accounts, college fund, trust for Arya's future. He paid off Naomi's student loans in full, handled the school tuition, covered rent for a year in advance. He did it all quietly, not as a grand gesture, but as a simple truth. This was his family. Taking care of them was his privilege, not their burden. Naomi cried when she saw her loan balance at zero. I've been paying on these for 8 years. Now you can focus on other things, like maybe sleeping occasionally. She laughed through her tears. What a concept. Julian also started learning the small intimacies of fatherhood. How Arya liked her sandwiches cut diagonal, not straight. That she was afraid of thunderstorms and needed someone to hold her during lightning. That she had nightmares sometimes about being alone and woke up crying for her mother. The first time he witnessed a nightmare, it broke his heart. He'd been staying for dinner and the evening had stretched late. Arya had fallen asleep on the couch during a movie. Rather than wake her, they'd carried her to bed. An hour later, her screams echoed through the apartment. Julian and Naomi both ran to her room. Arya was sitting up in bed, sobbing. Mommy, Mommy, don't leave me. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Naomi gathered her close. You were gone. You disappeared, and I couldn't find you, and I was all alone. It was just a dream. I'm not going anywhere. Arya clung to her mother, shaking. Then she saw Julian in the doorway. Daddy Julian? I'm here too. You won't disappear. The question shattered him. Never. I promise I'm not going anywhere. What if you change your mind? What if I'm too much work? Julian moved to the bed and wrapped both Arya and Naomi in his arms. You are not too much work. You are exactly the right amount of daughter. And I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Promise? I promise. Cross my heart. Arya gradually calmed, eventually fell back asleep, curled between them. Julian and Naomi sat on either side of her, keeping watch. She has these nightmares, Naomi whispered. Not often, but sometimes. Always about being abandoned, about losing me, because you're all she's ever had. And now she's terrified of losing either of us. Naomi looked at him in the dim light of the nightlight. We can't screw this up, Julian. We can't let her down. We won't. It was a promise he intended to keep. 6 months passed in a blur of breakfast mornings and soccer games and bedtime stories. Julian's house slowly transformed. Color appeared on the walls, Arya's artwork in frames, toys in the living room, a blue accent wall in what had become her room there, because she'd declared blue was the color of happiness. His office gained a small desk where Arya could draw while he worked. She'd sit with her sketchbook, tongue poking out in concentration, creating elaborate buildings that somehow made structural sense despite being drawn by a 6-year-old. She has your gift, Naomi observed one evening, watching Arya design what she called a library that could also be a playground. She has your compassion. Every building she designs is about helping people. They were co-parenting well, better than well. But there was a careful distance between them. They didn't talk about their own relationship, focused only on Arya. Until one evening, Julian arrived for his usual Thursday dinner, and Naomi answered the door dressed up. Not fancy, but nice. Her hair down, wearing a dress instead of scrubs or yoga pants. Arya's at your mother's, she said. I asked if she could have a sleepover there. My mother's. Julian had introduced Arya to his mother a month ago. It had been awkward at first, but his mother had surprised him. She'd been gentle with Arya. Present, genuinely trying. She called and asked if she could spend time with her granddaughter. I thought maybe you and I could use an evening to talk. Adult talk. Without little ears, Julian's heart rate picked up. Okay. Naomi had cooked a real meal, not just pasta or takeout. They ate at her small table, making careful conversation. Then they moved to the couch with wine. Julian, Naomi started. We've spent 6 months building a parenting partnership, and it's been good, really good. But I think we need to talk about us. Us. I still love you. I never stopped. Even when I was terrified and pregnant and alone. Even when I convinced myself I'd done the right thing. I loved you through all of it. Julian's breath caught. Naomi, let me finish. I've spent 6 years protecting myself, protecting Arya, building walls so high nothing could hurt us. But those walls also kept out any possibility of happiness, of real partnership. And I'm tired of living behind walls. She moved closer. I want to try. To see if we can be more than CO parents. To see if what we had 6 years ago can become something even better now. I want that too, Julian said. I've wanted it since the moment I saw you at the wedding. But I didn't want to push. Didn't want to mess up what we're building with Arya. What if we can have both? What if we can be good parents and also be good together? Julian cupped her face in his hands. I think we can be extraordinary together. He kissed her then. Their first kiss in 6 years. It was different from before, less desperate, more intentional, built on truth instead of just passion. They'd both been broken and put themselves back together. This kiss was scarred and strong and real. When they pulled apart, Naomi was crying. I missed you. God, Julian, I missed you so much. I missed you too. Every single day. They talked for hours, really talked, about their fears and hopes, about the life they'd lost and the life they could build, about being scared to trust and choosing to anyway. I need this to be slow, Naomi said, for Arya. She's just getting used to having you in her life. We can't confuse her by suddenly living together or getting engaged or anything dramatic. Okay, slow. We date. Like normal people. Exactly. We have dinner without Arya sometimes. We hold hands. We build towards something instead of rushing into it. I can do that. Julian kissed her forehead. As long as I know we're building toward forever, I can be patient. Forever is the plan. They started dating. Actual dates while Arya stayed with Julian's mother or Mrs. Patterson. Quiet dinners at restaurants where they learned who they'd become in 6 years apart. Long walks along the waterfront discussing everything and nothing. Naomi talked about her work, the weight of holding children's lives in her hands during surgery, the families she helped and the ones she couldn't, the way medicine had changed her, made her both harder and softer simultaneously. Julian shared his philosophy of architecture, how he'd come to see buildings as more than structures. They were promises made in physical form, spaces for healing or learning or growing. Every design choice mattered because it affected how people felt, how they moved through the world, whether they found hope or despair. You're different than you were 6 years ago, Naomi observed one evening as they walked through a park. So are you. Is it a good different? It's a real different. We're not kids playing at being adults anymore. We're people who've survived hard things, who've made mistakes and learned from them, who know what we want because we know what it's like to lose it. She took his hand. I'm scared sometimes, scared that something will go wrong again, that someone else will threaten us, that I'll lose you or you'll lose me or Arya will get hurt. Something will go wrong. Life is messy. It's imperfect. There will be hard days and arguments and moments of doubt. Julian stopped walking and pulled her to face him. But here's what's different. This time, if someone threatens you, I won't be kept in the dark. We face things together, as a team. That's what we didn't have before. Together, she echoed. The word sounded like a promise. Together, Arya noticed the shift. She was 6, not blind. Are you and Daddy Julian boyfriend-girlfriend now? She asked Naomi one morning while getting ready for school. We're dating. Seeing if we want to be together that way. Do you? I think so. How do you feel about that? Arya thought seriously. I think it's good. You smile more now, and Daddy Julian smiles all the time. Mrs. Martha says love makes people smile even when things are hard. Mrs. Martha is very wise. I know. She's 75. That's a lot of time to learn about love. 3 months into dating, Julian proposed. Not to Naomi. To the idea of more. He'd been carrying a ring in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Then he remembered what Naomi had taught him 6 years ago. Perfect wasn't real. Real was what mattered. So on a random Tuesday evening after they'd put Arya to bed at his house, after they'd cleaned up dinner and were just existing together in his living room, Julian got down on one knee. "What are you doing?" Naomi asked. "Something I should have done 6 years ago if life had been different." He pulled out the ring box. "Naomi Rivers, you're the best decision I ever made, and the worst loss I ever survived. You're brilliant and strong, and you raised our daughter to be extraordinary. You chose peace over revenge and love over fear, and you keep choosing hope even when it's hard. Will you marry me?" Naomi's hands flew to her mouth. "Julian, you don't have to answer now. Take time, think about it. But I need you to know that I'm all in. I want forever with you. I want to be Arya's father legally and officially. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to build something real and lasting and true." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you. Really, really." She laughed through tears. "I've thought about it every day for 3 months, wondering if you'd ask, hoping you would, terrified you wouldn't." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It was perfect, simple and elegant. A center stone surrounded by smaller ones. Exactly her style. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Like you." They kissed, and it felt like coming home. Like every moment of the past 6 years had been leading to this. The pain and the loss and the searching. All of it mattered, because it brought them here. From upstairs, they heard a door creak. Small footsteps on the stairs. Arya appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. I heard voices. "Are you okay?" "We're perfect," Julian said. "Come here." Arya climbed onto the couch between them. "Why is Mommy crying? Did something bad happen?" "No, baby. Something very good happened." Naomi held up her hand, showing the ring. "Daddy Julian asked me to marry him." Arya's eyes went huge. "You said yes?" "I said yes." Arya threw her arms around both of them. "This is the best day ever. We're going to be a real family, all of us together." "We're already a real family," Julian said gently. "This just makes it official. Can I be in the wedding?" "You're going to be the most important person in the wedding," Naomi promised. "Because it's not just Daddy Julian and me getting married. It's all 3 of us becoming an official family." Arya beamed, and her face scrunched up in thought. "Wait, you didn't ask me." "Ask you what?" Julian said. "To marry us. I'm part of this family too." "You should have asked me if I want to marry you guys." Julian and Naomi exchanged glances. Arya had a point. "You're absolutely right," Julian said seriously. "Arya James Rivers, will you be my daughter? Officially and legally and forever?" "Yes." She bounced on the couch. "I will. I definitely will." They hugged as a family, all 3 of them tangled together, laughing and crying and whole. I need to pause here, because this is important. Naomi just chose peace over revenge. She chose her daughter's well-being over justice. How many of us could do that? Really think about it. If this story is moving you, if you're feeling these characters, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear about second chances. Comment below. Are you team sue them or team choose peace? Or just tell me where you're watching from. Or say I'm with you, Dr. Phillips. Let's keep going. 2 weeks later, Arya had her own ideas about the proposal. They'd gone to the park for a Saturday picnic. Arya had been acting strange all morning, secretive, giggling to herself. She clutched a small backpack and refused to let anyone look inside. After they'd eaten sandwiches and fruit, Arya stood up and cleared her throat dramatically. "I have an announcement," she said in her most serious voice. Julian and Naomi exchanged amused glances. "I've been thinking," Arya continued. "Daddy Julian asked Mommy to marry him, and he asked me to be his daughter. But he didn't do it right." "What?" Julian tried not to laugh. "You didn't ask both of us together. We're a package deal. That's what Mommy always says. So I'm going to fix the proposal." She opened her backpack and pulled out 3 items. A ring pop, a folded piece of paper, and a small velvet box that looked suspiciously like it came from a jewelry store. She handed the ring pop to Julian. "This is for Mommy. Because you're supposed to have a ring when you propose. Then she gave the paper to Naomi. This is for you to read. I wrote it myself. Mrs. Martha helped me spell the big words. Naomi unfolded it with shaking hands. She read aloud, her voice breaking. Dear Mommy, I love you more than trains and chocolate ice cream combined. You're the best mommy in the whole world. Daddy Julian loves you too. Even more than I do, and I didn't think that was possible. We want to be a family forever, not just for now, forever and ever. So, I'm asking, will you marry us? Will you choose us every day like you always say love is supposed to be? Love, Arya. P.S. Mrs. Martha says marriage is about choosing to love someone every day, even when it's hard. I think we already do that. Now we just make it official. Tears streamed down Naomi's face. Arya, baby, this is beautiful. I'm not done, Arya said. She turned to Julian. Your turn. Give Mommy the ring pop and say the words. Julian got down on one knee in the grass, holding the ring pop like it was a priceless diamond. Naomi Rivers. Will you marry me and this incredible girl? Will you choose us every day, even when it's hard? Yes. Naomi laughed through her tears. Yes, I choose you, both of you. Every single day. Julian slipped the candy ring onto her finger, next to the real one. Arya clapped her hands together. Good. Now, Mommy, you have to open the box I brought. The velvet box held a delicate necklace, 3 charms, a heart, a star, and a train. Grandma Patricia helped me pick it out, Arya explained. I used my allowance money. The heart is for love, the star is for wishes, and the train is because trains take you places, and we're going places together. As a family, Arya, Naomi, could barely speak. This is too much. Grandma said I had enough saved, and she said this was small but perfect, just like our family is going to be. Perfect, because it's ours. Julian helped Naomi put on the necklace. The 3 charms caught the sunlight. Now it's official, Arya declared. We're engaged, all 3 of us. Other park visitors had noticed the scene. A few were openly crying. One woman called out, "Best proposal I've ever seen." Arya waved at them. We're getting married. All of us. A little boy nearby said to his mother, "Can I propose to you and Daddy?" His mother laughed. Sure, baby. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park, playing, laughing, taking photos. Arya insisted on a family selfie, where all 3 of them held up Naomi's hands, showing both rings. For when I'm old like Mrs. Martha and want to remember this day, Arya explained. That evening, after Arya had fallen asleep, exhausted from excitement, Julian and Naomi looked at the photos on Naomi's phone. She's extraordinary, Naomi said. She gets it from you. From both of us, I think. Your creativity, my compassion, some perfect combination. Julian pulled Naomi close. When should we get married? What kind of wedding do you want? Something small. Family and close friends. I don't need big or fancy. I just need real. The community center? Julian suggested. Where we met. Naomi's eyes lit up. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The place where our story started. They planned a wedding for 1 month later. Small and intimate. Only 50 people. Naomi's parents and sister. Julian's mother, Richard, Mrs. Martha. Staff from the community center and Naomi's hospital. People who mattered. People who'd supported them. The community center was transformed with white flowers and string lights. Simple, but beautiful. Exactly what they wanted. Arya was the flower girl, of course. She wore a red dress with a full skirt that twirled when she spun. She took her job very seriously, walked down the aisle with perfect posture, scattering rose petals with the precision of a surgeon. When she reached the front, she whispered loudly to Julian, I didn't mess up, not even once. You were perfect, he whispered back. Then the music changed, and Naomi appeared. She wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated. No veil, just flowers woven through her hair. She glowed with happiness, and when their eyes met, Julian felt the same pull he'd felt 6 years ago at this very center. The certainty that this woman was his future. She walked down the aisle alone, by choice, not being given away, but choosing. When she reached him, she took his hands. They stood together with Arya between them, each parent holding one of their daughter's hands. The officiant was a woman who ran another community center across town. Naomi's mentor. We gather today, she began, to celebrate love that refused to be destroyed. Julian and Naomi's story isn't simple. They met and fell in love. Then they were torn apart by forces beyond their control. They spent 6 years separated, but love brought them back together, not because it was easy, but because they believed it was worth fighting for. She smiled at Arya, and they created this incredible person in the process. Arya, you're proof that even in darkness, beautiful things can grow. Arya beamed. Julian and Naomi had written their own vows. Julian went first. Naomi, 6 years ago I lost you and I didn't understand why. I spent those years building an empire but feeling empty inside. Then I found you again, found Arya. And I understood what I'd been missing: purpose, connection, real love. His voice cracked. You taught me that wealth isn't about what you accumulate, but about what you give away. You showed me that family isn't always blood, that community matters more than status, that showing up is more valuable than showing off. I promise to keep showing up every day, every moment, for you and for Arya and for the life we're building together. Naomi wiped tears from her eyes before starting her vows. Julian, when I met you, I thought you were just another rich person looking to feel good about himself. But you proved me wrong. You saw me, really saw me, not as a project or a charity case, but as a person with value and worth. You loved me without conditions. She glanced at Arya. When I had to leave, it was the hardest decision I ever made. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was really just scared. Scared of your grandfather's threats, scared of your world, scared that love wouldn't be enough. She looked back at Julian. I was wrong. Love is always enough when it's real. You found us. You didn't give up. You fought for us when I was too afraid to fight for myself. I promised to choose you every single day, even when it's hard. I promised to build a life full of love and laughter and purpose. I promised to be your partner in all things. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The officiant asked for the rings. Arya produced them from a small pouch she'd been guarding all day. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands, circular and unbroken. By the power vested in me, the officiant said, I pronounce you married. Julian, you may kiss your bride. Julian pulled Naomi close and kissed her as their family and friends erupted in applause. Arya jumped up and down between them. We did it. We're really married now, all of us. The reception was in the same room, tables where the chairs had been. Mrs. Martha had made the cake. 3 layers covered in fresh flowers. Local restaurants had catered, the kind of places Julian had learned to love through Naomi. During dinner, Julian's mother stood to give a toast. She looked nervous. Julian's mother, who'd commanded boardrooms her entire life, was nervous speaking to 50 people in a community center. I'm not good at this, she began. Emotions, vulnerability, all of it. But my therapist says growth happens outside your comfort zone. So here I am. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. 6 years ago, my father-in-law did something unforgivable. He threatened Naomi and her family because he was afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of anything. That didn't fit his narrow view of how life should be. In doing so, he stole 6 years from Julian and Naomi. He stole 6 years of Arya's life from her father. The room went quiet. I can't undo that. But I can tell you what I've learned. Love isn't about control. Family isn't about status or money or living up to some impossible standard. It's about showing up. It's about trying to be better today than you were yesterday. It's about accepting people as they are, not trying to force them into shapes that make you comfortable. She looked at Arya. My granddaughter taught me that. She's 6 years old and wiser than I'll ever be. She loves without conditions. She forgives without holding grudges. She sees the good in people even when they don't deserve it. Julian's mother raised her glass. To Julian and Naomi, may your marriage be everything mine wasn't. May you always choose each other. May you build a family based on love, not fear. And may you teach your children, including any future children, the lessons I failed to teach mine." Everyone raised their glasses to Julian and Naomi. The evening was full of dancing and laughter. Julian danced with Arya. Naomi danced with her father. Julian's mother laughed with Naomi's parents. The community they'd built gathered around them with genuine love and support. Arya, in her rumpled red dress stained with frosting, climbed into Julian's lap around 9 o'clock. "Is the wedding over?" she asked sleepily. "Almost, sweetheart. It was a good wedding. Everyone was happy. Everyone was very happy." "Daddy Julian?" "Yes. I'm glad I ran to you at that other wedding. Even though Mommy said I should wait, I'm glad I didn't wait." Julian hugged her close. "I'm glad too. Running toward me was the bravest thing anyone's ever done. Mrs. Martha says sometimes you have to run towards scary things instead of away from them. That's how you find out they're not really scary after all." Mrs. Martha is right. They took Arya home that night, not to Julian's house or Naomi's apartment, to their new home, a house they'd bought together in a good neighborhood with excellent schools, big enough for a family, warm enough to be loved. Arya had her own room, blue walls, just like she wanted, filled with books about trains and architecture, her drawings covering every surface. After they tucked her in, Julian and Naomi stood in the doorway watching her sleep. "We did good," Naomi said. "We did, despite everything. We built something beautiful, the hard way. Is there any other way?" Naomi smiled. "No, I don't think there is. We're almost at the end of this journey. But before we get there, I want to hear from you. Has this story moved you? Have you ever had to rebuild something you thought was lost forever? Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Stories about real love, real struggle, real redemption. And comment, where in the world are you watching from? Or just say, "I'm with you, Dr. Phillips." I read every single comment. Now, let's see where Julian, Naomi, and Arya are 1 year later. 1 year after the wedding, they stood in the same community center for a different reason. Drake Technologies had expanded its educational initiative to 20 cities nationwide. Naomi had left her coordinator position to run the program full-time, combining Julian's resources with her expertise to create real change in underserved communities. The celebration was packed. Families whose lives had been changed by the program. Children who now had access to computers and educational software. Parents who'd found support and resources. Julian's mother was there too. She joined the foundation board, used her connections for good instead of control. She showed up at every event, rolled up her sleeves, worked alongside volunteers. She was learning that respect earned through kindness mattered more than respect commanded through fear. Arya, now 7.5, thriving in 2nd grade, moved through the crowd with confidence. She still wanted to be an architect like her dad or a doctor like her mom. She hadn't decided yet. Both options were equally valid in her world. Julian stood with Naomi, watching their daughter help set up chairs. Naomi's hand rested on her pregnant belly, their second child. A daughter they'd already named Grace, named after the quality that had brought them back together. "Can you believe this?" Naomi asked. "A year ago we were just figuring out how to be together. Now we're married, expecting another baby, changing lives across the country." "You built this," Julian said. "Your vision, your passion. I just provided the funding. We built it. Together. That's the whole point." Arya ran over, breathless. "Everything's ready." "Are you going to give your speech now?" Julian had prepared remarks, but looking at his family, at the community gathered, at the lives being changed, formal speeches felt wrong. "I think I'll keep it simple," he said. He moved to the small stage. The room quieted. 6 years ago, Julian began. "I walked into this building for the first time. I was here to give a speech, to feel good about myself for an hour. Then I met someone who changed everything. Dr. Naomi Rivers showed me what real impact looks like. Not writing checks from a distance, but being present, showing up, doing the work." He found Naomi in the crowd. She was crying happy tears. This initiative isn't charity, it's investment. Investment in futures, in education, in the belief that every child deserves access to tools that will help them learn and grow. Every family deserves support. Every community deserves resources. He gestured to Naomi. The woman who taught me that is here today. My wife, my partner, the person who dedicates her life to serving others. And this work? It's just beginning. We're expanding to 30 more cities next year. Because when you combine resources with genuine compassion, when you show up and do the actual work, change happens. Applause filled the room. After the formal program, people lingered, sharing stories, making connections, building the community that was the true goal of all of this. Mrs. Martha approached Julian and Naomi. You've done something remarkable here. Thank you, Mrs. Martha. We couldn't have done it without you. The library programs have been essential. I'm proud of you both. And proud of that little girl. She nodded toward Arya, who was showing a group of younger children how to use one of the new tablets. She's going to change the world. She already has, Julian said. She changed mine. That evening, back at their home, after Arya had finally fallen asleep, Julian and Naomi sat on their back porch. The city lights twinkled in the distance. This isn't the ending, Naomi said softly. This is just a really good middle. To many more middles, Julian agreed. To showing up, to choosing each other, to love that's stronger than fear, stronger than anything. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, the future stretching out ahead full of promise. Inside, Arya slept peacefully, dreaming of trains and buildings and all the places she'd go, all the things she'd build, all the people she'd help. Outside, her parents kept watch, partners in work and life, and the endless project of choosing love over fear, hope over bitterness, connection over control. Because at the end of every story worth telling, there was the same truth. People were worth fighting for. Love was worth rebuilding. And second chances, though rare, were the most precious blueprints of all. 3 years later, Julian stood in a gallery showcasing Arya's first art exhibition. At 10 years old, their daughter had created a series of architectural drawings imagining hospitals of the future, buildings with gardens on their walls, designs bringing nature inside for healing, structures prioritizing peace over profit. Naomi leaned against Julian's shoulder, her hand on her pregnant belly. Baby Grace was 3 now, and terrorizing the gallery with her enthusiasm. Their third child, a son they'd named James, was on the way. She's brilliant, Naomi murmured, watching Arya explain her drawings to fascinated adults. She gets it from you, the healing part, the caring about people, and from you, the vision, the ability to imagine something better. Arya wore a button that said, Future Architect/Doctor. Haven't decided yet. She moved through the space with confidence, hands gesturing expressively, autumn eyes bright with passion. She explained her concept. Hospitals that didn't feel like hospitals. Spaces that helped people heal through beauty and nature and light. This one, she said, pointing to a particularly complex drawing, has a garden on every floor, because Daddy taught me that nature heals. And this one has windows that can become skylights, so patients can see stars at night, because Mommy says hope is just as important as medicine. An architect in the crowd asked, How old are you? 10. But I've been thinking about healing buildings since I was 6. That's when I met my dad and learned what he does. Your father must be very proud. He is. Both my parents are. They taught me that buildings should serve people, not the other way around, and that if you're going to create something that matters. Julian felt his throat tighten with pride. Later, as people mingled and discussed Arya's work, Mrs. Martha found Julian and Naomi. Another family helped, she said softly, marking something in her ever-present notebook. Another story of love lost and found. Thank you, Julian said, for being there for Arya all those years, for teaching her wisdom I couldn't. I just shared what 78 years of living taught me. That people are worth fighting for, that love is worth rebuilding, that second chances are gifts we don't always deserve, but should always treasure. She looked at Arya, surrounded by admirers, glowing with confidence and joy. That child is going to change the world. She already changed ours, Naomi said. When the gallery finally closed, they gathered as a family. Arya, still buzzing with excitement. Grace, tired and cranky. Naomi, exhausted but happy. Julian, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Can we do this again?" Arya asked. "When I'm older and have even more ideas?" "Absolutely," Julian promised. "We'll showcase every brilliant idea you ever have." "Good, because I have lots of them. Hundreds, maybe thousands." They drove home through Portland, their city, the place where they'd met and lost each other and found each other again, the place where they'd built a family against impossible odds. At home, after the girls were in bed, Julian and Naomi stood in the nursery they were preparing for James. Pale green walls, a mobile of tiny buildings and trains hanging over the crib. "Do you ever think about the 6 years?" Naomi asked. "The time we lost?" "Sometimes. But I try not to dwell there. We can't change the past. We can only choose what we do with now." "Very wise." "Did Mrs. Martha teach you that?" Julian smiled. Actually, Arya did. She said the present is called the present because it's a gift. Our daughter is smarter than both of us. Definitely smarter than me. They stood together in the quiet house. Their children sleeping, their family safe and whole and real. "We did good," Naomi said. "Despite everything, despite the fear and the threats and the years apart. We built something beautiful." "We built it the hard way," Julian agreed, "through loss and pain and learning what really matters." "Is there any other way to build something that lasts?" "No, I don't think there is, because love built on easy ground crumbles when tested. But love built on loss, on truth, on choosing each other every single day even when it's hard, that love could weather anything. That love could last. That love could heal. And in the end, that love was everything. If this story touched you, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button. Join the Love and Twilights family. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's given up on love. Someone who thinks second chances don't exist. Someone who needs to know that showing up matters more than being perfect. Tell me in the comments, what was your favorite moment in this story? Was it Arya running toward Julian at the wedding? The proposal in the park? Mrs. Martha's quiet wisdom? Or tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing this community spans the globe. Or simply say, "I'm with you, Dr. Phillips." Those words make my day every single time. I'll be back next time with another story, another journey of love, loss, and redemption. Another reminder that we're all works in progress. Another chance to believe in better tomorrows. This is Dr. Phillips reminding you, love is worth rebuilding. Chances are real, and you, yes you, are worth fighting for. Until next time, keep choosing love over fear. Keep showing up even when it's hard. Keep believing in your own second chances, because the story doesn't end when things fall apart. Sometimes that's just when the real story begins. I'll see you in the next story.